in my business, I have all of these entrepreneurs from hundreds of different industries, and all these clients, and I love my customers, and I have a great time like doing what I do. And my job is to share with people what works. And the reason we do Sozo inner healing and what I call memos from the head office, which are prophetic words and things like that, is because this stuff works. In fact, some of that stuff is like the best diamond tip saw blade for solving certain kinds of problems that I've ever found. So, for example, I'd say about 12 years ago, 13 years ago, I hit this spot in my life where, most people just kind of call it the midlife crisis, but like everything was falling apart at the seams, okay? Marriage problems, all this personal garbage was coming up. I think most people, if they're honest with themselves and like they're, not avoiding the realities of life, eventually you get to a point where you figure out, hey man, like I got a lot of baggage. Okay, like, I can lay on a couch and talk to the therapist about my mom or my dad or this or that, and like, man, like this stuff is really affecting me. And so I get plunged into this, and I start, like, I'm up to my eyeballs in problems that I don't know how to solve. And then that's also a point in my life where I started getting real with my friends, and my friends started getting real with me, and I started figuring out that everybody had these problems and it wasn't just me. And I also got really depressed because, as far as I could tell, most of them weren't solving their problems, and most of them didn't know how, and most people were just sort of coping with stuff and like medicating with some addiction or some bad habits or something, and like not really solving anything. And some people were just going to 12-step meetings for the rest of their life. And man, like I was getting really depressed. And then so I'm a marketer, and I have access to all of these interesting people, and my world consists of like the alternative version of like everything. Right. Okay, so how many personal coaches do I know, and how many therapists do I know, and how many hypnosis people do I, and like, and it go like the list goes on and on and on. I mean, there's just all these things that I'm like, okay, I'll talk to you about that. Like, and I start going through, and I find out, most of this stuff doesn't really work, at least not for the hard stuff. It might solve the easy problems. It doesn't solve the hard problems. Well, one time I was having this conversation, in fact, two different people. So one was a woman who had been molested by her brother when she was 8. Wow. And it had created some crippling emotional problems for her, and some very serious problems in her marriage, in her sex life and everything. And then I had another friend who was molested by his dad for years, and he had a bunch of he had like the male version of like all the same problems. And both of these people, they used the Sozo approach, and they both got significant removal of most of their issues. She's like, oh yeah, me and my husband, we're in good shape. Like we've gotten past this stuff, and same thing with him. And I was like, okay, if this stuff can solve rape and incest, we could probably solve some financial head trash. Because if anybody that does what I do figures out, it's not as much about your business education as much as it is about how emotionally clear you are, and how much head trash you have, and how conflicted you are about being successful and money and all this kind of stuff. And so we did this thing called a financial Sozo seminar, and it was really successful. And the way we did it was, I told everybody, this will work on anybody. You don't have to be a Christian, and this is not going to be a come to Jesus meeting. I pretty much tell people that a lot. Like, I'm a Christian. Everybody knows Perry's a Christian. All right? Not hiding it, not ashamed of it.
The cat's
But
out
you know what?
of the bag.
You could be a Buddhist, you could be a Hindu, agnostic, Mormon, Jehovah's Witness, Jewish, New Age, whatever. I don't know if it'll work if you're like a hardcore atheist. Probably not going to help you. But, you know, if you're at least open, you know, when I read my Bible, like, God talks to all kinds of people. He doesn't just talk to Jews, and he doesn't just talk to Christians. Like, go read it if you don't believe me, okay? And I go, you know, this might be a Jesus comes to you meeting, but this is not a come to Jesus meeting, okay? So we're not gonna push any of this on you.
I love that.
It was really successful. In fact, if you go to my YouTube channel, which is called Planet Perry, you'll find a Sozo session of a guy. Like, I can't believe we found a guy that would do a Sozo session on video and put it on YouTube, but we found one and he did it. And you can watch the whole thing. You can see how it works. And like, it was this enormously liberating thing for him. And then he shot a video 6 months later telling us how different his life was after he had done this. And so Planet Perry, for those, you know, we do this in a permission marketing kind of way. So like, we have a spirituality email list, and people can opt into it and they can opt out of it. And they're not going to get very much of this stuff if they don't want it. But occasionally we'll put out an invitation. And it's like Planet Perry is a demilitarized zone. It's like the strip of land between North and South Korea. And it's like, I'm not like proselytizing you, and I'm not, you know, criticizing your religious practices or anything. I just want to give you a chance to use the tools, the resources, the approaches, and kind of tap into the spiritual space. Like, you know, if you don't have a connection with God, try borrowing mine for a day and see how that works. And so, well, you know, people really like it. And it keeps growing, and nobody seems to complain about it either. Like, I'm kind of astounded. I mean, I got people like raking me over the coals about my views about evolution and stuff, but I don't have anybody raking me over the coals because I do memos from the head office meetings for, you know, or Sozo sessions and stuff. So I don't know, it's pretty interesting. I mean, who could have imagined it? That's for sure.